The fluorescent lights above the counter buzzed low and steady. Denise Colton stood behind the register with her hands pressed flat against the laminate, knuckles white, jaw tight. Her eyes stayed fixed on the group of young men near the front door. She did not blink. She did not move. 4 of them, all in their 20s. Tyler Brandt leaned against the counter with a slow, easy grin. His friends laughed at something he said. Voices too loud for the small diner. Denise did not respond. She kept her body still, her breathing shallow, her gaze locked somewhere just past Tyler's shoulder. In the corner booth near the window, a girl sat alone. Maya Colton was 11 years old. Her homework was spread across the table. Her pencil hovered above a half-finished sentence. She was not writing. She was watching her mother. Maya's chest barely moved. Her lips stayed pressed together. Her left hand rose slowly, almost without her knowing, and her fingers found her ear. She tugged once, twice, 3 times. Small, quiet pulls. A signal. A plea. Her mother did not see. Tyler was still talking, still leaning in, still smiling that lazy smile. His friends shifted near the door, blocking the exit. The diner felt smaller now. The air felt heavier. No one saw Maya's hand, except one person. Through the narrow pass-through window behind the counter, a figure sat in the back room. He was older, broad across the shoulders, wearing a faded leather vest with patches down the front. His face was half in shadow. A coffee cup sat in front of him, untouched. 2 other men sat nearby, but he was not speaking to them. He was not eating. He was watching. Marcus Wheeler had been called Stone for so long he barely remembered why. He had seen a lot of things in his 53 years. He had seen men lie. He had seen women freeze. He had seen children go quiet in ways that made his stomach turn. He saw the girl's hand now. He saw the 3 tugs. He did not know what the signal meant, but he knew what fear looked like when it lived inside a child's body. It looked like stillness. It looked like silence. It looked like a little girl pretending to do homework while her whole world held its breath. Stone's eyes moved from the girl to the mother. Denise's posture told him everything. She was not relaxed. She was not in control. She was enduring. Her smile, when it came, was thin and careful. The kind of smile a woman gives when she is counting the seconds until something ends. Tyler said something again. His voice was low, but the tone carried. Familiar. Possessive. One of his friends laughed and slapped the counter. Denise flinched, just slightly. Just enough for Stone to catch it. Maya's pencil slipped from her fingers. It rolled across the table and dropped to the floor. She did not pick it up. She did not move at all. Stone set his coffee cup down. The sound was soft, but it felt louder in his own ears. His hand rested on the edge of the table. His thumb pressed into the worn wood. He had told himself 100 times that other people's problems were not his business. He had told himself that stepping in only made things worse. He had told himself that the world did not need another old biker playing hero. But the girl's hand had moved again. 4 tugs this time. Faster. More urgent. Stone's jaw tightened. His fingers curled around the edge of the table. He looked at the girl one more time, and something in his chest shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. Something older. The men near the door were still laughing. Tyler was still leaning in. Denise was still frozen behind the counter. And Stone was still sitting in the back room, watching through the narrow window, his hand on the table, his decision not yet made. He did not stand. Not yet, but his weight shifted forward just slightly, and his eyes never left the child in the corner booth. The question hung in the air like smoke. Would he stay where he was? Would he tell himself this was not his fight? Or would he do what his gut was already telling him to do? Maya's hand dropped to her lap. Her eyes stayed on her mother. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Stone exhaled slowly. His hand moved an inch closer to the table's edge. The decision was coming. He could feel it building in his chest, pressing against his ribs, waiting for him to give it room. He just was not sure yet what he was going to do with it. The sedan pulled into the school pickup lane just as the final bell rang. Denise Colton tapped her fingers on the steering wheel and watched the doors. When Maya came out, backpack bouncing against her shoulders, Denise felt the knot in her chest loosen. It happened every day. Every single day. The same small relief. Maya slid into the passenger seat and buckled her seatbelt without being asked. She was already talking before the car moved. Something about a book report. Something about her teacher mispronouncing an author's name. Denise listened and asked questions and laughed when Maya did an impression of Mrs. Hartley squinting at the whiteboard. This was their ritual. This was the good part of the day. The drive home took 12 minutes. Their apartment sat on the second floor of a brick building with a laundromat on the ground level. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like fabric softener. Inside, the space was small but clean. A couch with a worn cushion. A kitchen table with 2 chairs. A single photo on the refrigerator showed Denise and Maya at a carnival 2 summers ago. Both of them holding cotton candy. Both of them smiling. There were no other photos. No other people in the frames. No explanation needed. Maya changed out of her school clothes and packed her homework into her backpack. She added a granola bar, a water bottle, and a small flashlight she always kept in the front pocket. She could not explain why she carried it. She just liked to be ready. Denise leaned against the door frame and watched her daughter zip up the bag. She said the other server called out tonight, so it would be a double shift. Maya nodded without looking up. She already knew. This was not the first time. It would not be the last. They drove to the diner in comfortable silence. Maya stared out the window at the trees and the storefronts and the old gas station on the corner. Denise kept her eyes on the road and her thoughts to herself. Rosie's diner sat at the edge of town, just past the hardware store, and the empty lot where the movie theater used to be. The sign out front flickered at night. The booths were cracked vinyl. The coffee was strong and the tips were weak, but the diner had been there for 30 years, and everyone in town had passed through at least once. Denise parked in the back and walked Maya through the kitchen entrance. The cook, a man named Earl, who never said more than 10 words a shift, nodded at them both. Maya waved. He almost smiled. Denise led her daughter to the booth in the corner, the one closest to the kitchen doors. She set a menu down on the table even though Maya never ordered anything. She said to stay quiet if anyone strange came in. Maya nodded. She knew the rules. She had been doing this for 2 years. Denise smoothed her apron and looked toward the front windows. Her voice dropped lower when she mentioned that those boys had been coming in more often lately. She did not say their names. She did not explain. But her jaw tightened and her fingers pressed into the edge of the table for just a moment. Maya noticed. She always noticed. But she did not ask questions. She opened her math workbook and picked up her pencil and pretended to focus. The sun was already sinking behind the trees outside. The parking lot emptied out as the dinner rush ended. A few truckers paid their checks and left. A couple in the corner booth shared a slice of pie and spoke in low voices. The diner grew quieter, and the light outside turned orange, then gray. Then the sound came, distant at first, then closer. The low rumble of motorcycle engines rolled through the evening air like thunder. One after another, the bikes pulled into the lot, their headlights swept across the windows. The front door swung open at 9:30, and the temperature inside the diner shifted. Tyler Brandt walked in first, shoulders loose, grin already in place. 3 friends followed behind him. They had been drinking, but not enough to stumble, just enough to feel untouchable. Denise saw them from across the room. Her hands stopped moving over the counter. Her smile disappeared. She turned back to the coffee pot and pretended to be busy. Tyler and his friends claimed the booth near the register. They did not order. They never did. They sat and watched and waited for something to happen. This was their pattern. They came in late, stayed too long, and made the air feel heavy. One of them said something under his breath. The others laughed. Denise kept her back turned. Her fingers gripped the handle of the coffee pot until the knuckles went pale. Maya sat in the corner booth with her math workbook open. She heard the laughter. She did not look up. Her pencil moved in slow circles on the page, drawing nothing, pretending to write. Tyler leaned back in his seat and stretched his arms across the top of the booth. His eyes moved around the room. They landed on Denise first. Then they drifted toward the back. He saw the girl. His voice carried across the diner when he said something about Denise's little shadow. His friends turned to look. One of them snickered. Another made a comment too low to hear. Tyler's grin widened. Denise heard it. Her whole body went still, just for a second. Then she picked up a rag and wiped the counter, moving toward the kitchen doors, putting distance between herself and the booth. The older couple by the window stood and left their payment on the table. The truck driver near the register paid his check and walked out without a word. The diner emptied. The silence that followed was louder than the laughter had been. Tyler stood up. His friends stayed seated, watching. He crossed the room slowly, hands in his pockets, taking his time. He stopped at Maya's booth and leaned against the table, his shadow falling over her homework. He asked her what her name was. His voice was soft, almost friendly. Maya did not answer. Her pencil stopped moving. Her eyes stayed on the page. He asked where her daddy was. The question came out light, almost playful, but the edge underneath it was sharp. Maya's fingers curled around the pencil. She looked toward the counter, toward her mother. Tyler liked what he saw on her face. He liked the fear. Denise moved fast. She crossed the room and stopped a foot away from Tyler, her voice low and steady. She told him to leave her daughter alone. There was no shake in her words, no hesitation. Tyler raised both hands in mock surrender. He smiled and said he was just being friendly. He said some people had no sense of humor. Then he turned and walked back to his booth, still smiling, still watching. His friends slapped the table when he sat down. One of them said something about Denise being feisty. Tyler nodded but did not laugh. His eyes kept drifting back to the corner booth. Maya's hand rose slowly to her ear. She tugged once, twice. Her mother was behind the counter now, her back straight, her jaw tight. She did not see the signal. Tyler pulled out his phone. He held it up and aimed it at Denise. His thumb swiped across the screen. He said something about getting this on video. Something about people needing to see how rude she was. His friends laughed and told him to post it. Denise turned her back to them. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. She did not move. She did not respond. Maya's hand stayed at her ear. 3 tugs now. 4. Her chest rose and fell in short, shallow breaths. In the back room, Stone stood from his chair. The movement was slow and deliberate. He walked to the pass-through window and leaned forward, his eyes scanning the dining area. He saw Tyler with the phone. He saw Denise frozen behind the counter. He saw the way her shoulders pulled inward, the way she kept glancing toward the corner booth without turning her head. And then he saw Maya. The girl sat perfectly still. Her hand was at her ear. Her face was pale. Her eyes were locked on her mother, waiting for something, hoping for something that was not coming. Stone's jaw tightened. His hand rested on the edge of the window frame. He watched Tyler lower the phone and whisper something to his friends. The laughter that followed was quiet and mean. Stone did not look away. He stood at the window with his weight shifting forward, his decision forming behind his eyes. The diner was quiet. The threat was no longer hidden, and the man in the back room was no longer willing to pretend he had not seen it. The back room was warm and full of voices. 35 members of the Iron Guardians filled the space, their laughter mixing with the clink of coffee cups and the scrape of forks on plates. A sheet cake sat in the center of the longest table, half-eaten, with blue frosting spelling out the words, "Happy Trails, Grandpa Earl." Earl himself sat at the head of the table, 73 years old, white beard down to his chest, grinning like a man who had earned every wrinkle on his face. The men around him traded stories and slapped his shoulder and called him names that only brothers could use. But Stone was not at the table. He stood at the pass-through window with his arms crossed, his back to the celebration. His eyes stayed fixed on the dining room beyond. The laughter behind him faded into background noise. He watched Denise move behind the counter. He watched Tyler lean back in his booth with his phone raised. He watched the girl in the corner, her hand rising to her ear, tugging once, twice, 3 times. Stone's jaw tightened. His fingers pressed into the leather of his vest. 15 years ago, he had a daughter. Her name was Lily. She had brown hair that curled at the ends and a laugh that filled every room she entered. She was 12 years old when a drunk driver ran a stop sign on a Sunday afternoon. The car hit her bicycle at 40 miles an hour. She died on the pavement before the ambulance arrived. Stone was stationed overseas when he got the call. He flew home on a cargo plane and landed 12 hours after she was gone. He never got to say goodbye. He never got to hold her hand. He never got to tell her that he was sorry for all the birthdays he missed and all the promises he broke. That weight never left him. It lived in his chest like a stone he could not put down. After he came home, he tried to disappear. He drank too much. He stopped answering calls. He let the silence swallow him whole. It was the club that pulled him back. The Iron Guardians gave him a reason to stand up again. They ran a program called Guardians at the gate. When a child had to testify in court about abuse, the club would ride escort. 20, 30, sometimes 40 bikers would line the courthouse steps, standing between the child and anyone who might try to scare them into silence. Stone led every ride. He stood closest to the door. He made sure no child walked that path alone. He could not save Lily, but he could save someone else's daughter. He could be the wall that no one got through. The pink ribbon pin tucked under his vest collar had belonged to her. She wore it in her hair the last time he saw her face on a video call. He found it in her room after the funeral. He had carried it with him ever since. He never explained it to anyone. He never needed to. Now he stood at the window and watched Maya's hand fall back to her lap. The girl's face was pale. Her shoulders were stiff. Her eyes darted toward her mother, then back to the table. Stone knew that look. He had seen it in courtrooms and shelters and hospital waiting rooms. It was the look of a child who had learned to make herself small. A child who knew that being noticed meant being hurt. He also knew what Denise looked like. Her back was straight, but her hands trembled when she set down a coffee cup. Her eyes moved too fast. Her smile was gone. She was outnumbered. She was afraid. And she was trying not to let her daughter see it. Stone's chest tightened. He thought about what could happen if he stepped in. A scene. Accusations. Police who might not understand. The club could be blamed. The night could go sideways in a dozen different ways. But doing nothing, that was not something he could carry. Not again. Not after Lily. He turned away from the window and walked toward the head of the table. The laughter quieted as the men noticed his face. He stopped beside a man with a gray beard and a patch on his vest that read, President, Ross Delgado. The club called him Hammer. Stone leaned down and spoke one quiet sentence. His voice did not rise above the hum of the room. Hammer's eyes moved past Stone toward the pass-through window. He looked for a long moment. Then he looked back at Stone. He nodded once. No questions. No hesitation. Whatever happened next, the club was with him. Stone straightened. His hand brushed the edge of his vest, just below the collar, where the pink ribbon pin rested against his heart. Then he turned and walked toward the kitchen doors. Stone pushed through the kitchen doors and stepped into the front of the diner. He did not look at Tyler's booth. He did not glance toward Maya in the corner. He walked to the counter and sat down 3 seats away from where Denise stood, her rag moving in slow circles over the same spot she had already wiped clean. He folded his hands on the counter and waited. Denise looked up. Her eyes moved over him quickly. The leather vest, the gray beard, the broad shoulders, and the stillness in his posture. There was caution in her face, the kind that came from years of reading rooms and measuring threats. But there was something else, too. He was not smiling. He was not staring. He was just sitting, quiet and steady, like a man who had no interest in making her uncomfortable. She asked what he wanted. Her voice was flat, professional. Stone said coffee. Black. She poured it without another word and set the cup in front of him. Then she went back to wiping the counter. Tyler noticed the biker before the coffee cup touched the surface. He leaned toward his friends and made a joke about old leather daddies crashing the party. His friends laughed, but the sound was thinner now, quieter. Something about the man at the counter made them hesitate. Stone lifted the cup and drank. His eyes stayed forward, but his attention moved to the metal napkin holder beside his elbow. The chrome surface reflected the room behind him. He could see Tyler slouched in his booth. He could see the 3 friends shifting in their seats. He could see Maya in the corner, her pencil still, her hand rising slowly toward her ear. 3 tugs. Deliberate. Silent. Stone counted. He set down the cup and pulled out his phone. His thumbs moved across the screen without hurry. The message was short. Kid is using a distress signal. Mom does not see it. 4 males. Aggressive posture. Stay ready. He pressed send and slipped the phone back into his vest. In the back room, the laughter stopped. 34 men looked at their phones at the same time. The cake sat untouched. The stories died mid-sentence. Hammer stood from his chair and walked to the pass-through window. The others followed. Denise came back with the coffee pot. She refilled Stone's cup without being asked. Her hand trembled, just slightly. A few drops splashed onto the counter. Stone did not look at her directly. He kept his voice low, just loud enough for her to hear. He said he saw them. Denise's breath caught. Her eyes flicked toward Tyler's booth, then back to Stone. She wiped the spilled coffee quickly. Her movements sharper now, less controlled. But something in her shoulders shifted. The weight she had been carrying did not disappear, but it was no longer hers alone. She moved down the counter without another word. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were still shaking, but she stood a little straighter than before. Tyler watched her go. His smile faded for a moment, then returned. He whispered something to his friends. One of them laughed. Another looked toward Stone and then looked away. Tyler stood up. He crossed the room slowly, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the corner booth. He stopped in front of Maya's table and slid into the seat across from her. His arms stretched out along the back of the booth. His smile widened. Maya did not move. Her pencil stayed frozen above her homework. Her eyes dropped to the table. Her hand curled into a fist in her lap. Denise's voice cut across the diner. Loud. Firm. She told him to move. She told him to get away from her daughter. Tyler tilted his head and looked at her. His smile did not waver. He said he was just keeping the kid company. He said she looked lonely. He did not move. Denise took a step forward. Her hands clenched at her sides. Her voice rose again, sharper now, telling him to leave. Tyler leaned back in the booth and crossed his arms. His friends watched from across the room. One of them pulled out his phone. Stone set down his coffee cup. His eyes moved to the napkin holder again. He saw Tyler sitting across from Maya. He saw the girl's pale face. He saw her fist pressed against her leg. And he saw the question forming in Denise's eyes as she looked toward the counter, searching for something she was not sure she would find. Stone did not stand. Not yet. But his weight shifted forward on the stool, and his hand came to rest flat against the counter. The moment hung in the air, waiting to break. Tyler leaned forward in Maya's booth, his elbows on the table, his face too close to hers. He asked her what grade she was in. He asked if she liked school. He asked if she ever got scared being alone at night. Maya did not answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the homework in front of her. Her pencil lay still beside her hand. Her breathing was shallow, almost invisible. Tyler smiled. He said she was shy. He said shy girls were his favorite. Denise moved toward the booth, her voice sharp, telling him again to leave her daughter alone. But his friends shifted at the same moment, stepping into the aisle, blocking her path. They did not touch her. They did not threaten. They just stood there, laughing about something one of them had said, their bodies forming a wall between mother and child. It looked casual. 4 guys standing around. Nothing to call the police about. But the geometry was wrong. The positions were too perfect. The isolation was deliberate. Stone sat at the counter with his coffee cup in front of him. He did not move. His eyes stayed on the napkin holder, watching the reflection of the room behind him. He was calculating. If he stood too fast, Tyler might grab the girl. If he confronted them directly, the situation could turn violent. If he called the police, they would take time to arrive, and anything could happen in those minutes. He needed to be patient. He needed to be precise. He pulled out his phone and typed another message to Hammer. Need eyes. Send 2 outside. 2 to the front door. No sirens. He pressed send and set the phone face down on the counter. In the back room, the text arrived. Hammer read it without expression. He turned to the men around him and spoke in a low voice. No one argued. No one hesitated. The first biker stood and walked toward the restroom. He moved slowly, stopping near the kitchen door, pretending to check his phone. The second went outside through the back exit. He lit a cigarette and drifted toward the parking lot, positioning himself near the car Tyler had driven. 2 more walked through the kitchen and into the front of the diner. They sat at a booth by the window and started a loud argument about a football game. Their voices carried, filling the room with noise that felt almost normal. Tyler did not notice. He was too focused on Denise. He watched her face twist with fear and frustration. He watched her hands clench at her sides. He pulled out his phone and held it up, recording her as she begged him to leave Maya alone. His friends laughed. One of them said she should calm down. Another said Tyler was just being friendly. Tyler grinned and kept filming. Maya had stopped moving. Her body was perfectly still, the kind of stillness that came from years of learning that movement attracted attention. Her hand rested near her ear, but she did not tug anymore. Her eyes were empty, fixed on the table, seeing nothing. She did not think anyone was coming. Stone saw it. The moment a child gave up. He had seen it before, in courtrooms and shelters, in the faces of kids who had learned too young that the world was not safe. He had seen it in his own mirror, in the months after Lily died, when he stopped believing that anything he did would ever matter again. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled around the coffee cup. Tyler was still talking, still smiling, still enjoying the power he held over a mother and her child. His friends were still blocking the aisle. The camera on his phone was still recording. Stone looked toward the pass-through window. Hammer stood on the other side, watching through the narrow opening. Their eyes met. Stone nodded once. Hammer nodded back. Stone set down his coffee cup. He placed both hands flat on the counter. Then he pushed himself up from the stool. The chair scraped against the floor. The sound cut through the noise of the fake football argument. It cut through the laughter of Tyler's friends. It cut through the low hum of the fluorescent lights. Everyone in the diner turned to look. Tyler's smile faltered. His phone lowered an inch. His eyes moved to the man now standing at the counter. Tall and broad, leather vest stretched across his shoulders, gray beard framing a face that held no expression at all. Stone did not speak. He did not move toward the booth. He just stood there, steady and silent, his weight balanced, his hands at his sides. The laughter died. The room went quiet, and for the first time all night, Tyler looked like he was not sure what would happen next. Stone walked toward the corner booth. His steps were slow and even, his boots steady on the tile floor. He did not hurry. He did not hesitate. His eyes stayed fixed on the girl sitting across from Tyler. Tyler saw him coming. His smile flickered, and he started to speak. He said something about old men sticking their noses where they did not belong. He said something about minding his own business. Stone did not respond. He walked past Tyler's friends without looking at them. He moved around the edge of the table and stopped beside the booth. His shadow fell across the homework spread on the surface. He looked at Maya. Not at Tyler. Not at the phone still in Tyler's hand. Just at the girl. His voice was low and calm. He asked if she was okay. He asked if she wanted to go sit with her mother. Tyler stood up fast, his chair scraping against the floor. He told Stone to back off. He said he was just having a conversation. He said some people needed to learn how to mind their own business. Stone did not look at him. His eyes stayed on Maya. She did not speak. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then she nodded. Once. Just barely. That was enough. Stone stepped to the side, creating a clear path between the booth and the counter. Maya slid out of her seat and walked quickly, her head down, her arms pressed tight against her body. She crossed the room in seconds and reached her mother. Denise pulled her close. Her arm wrapped around Maya's shoulders and held on tight. For the first time all night, her chest rose and fell in a full breath. Tyler's face changed. The smile disappeared. His jaw tightened, and his hands curled into fists at his sides. He stepped toward Stone, chest out, voice loud enough to carry across the room. He asked who Stone thought he was. He called him an old man playing hero. He pointed at the leather vest and laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. He said bikers were all the same, losers pretending to be tough. Stone said nothing. He did not move forward. He did not step back. He stood with his weight balanced, his hands at his sides, and waited. Tyler's friends shifted behind him. Corey glanced toward the door. Jake muttered something under his breath. Drew was already moving, edging toward the exit without looking back. Then the kitchen doors swung open. Hammer came through first. He was tall and broad, with a gray beard and patches running down his vest. He walked to the counter and leaned against it, arms crossed. Behind him came the others. One by one, the Iron Guardians filed into the diner. They moved quietly, without hurry. Some sat in the empty booths. Some stood near the jukebox. Some took seats at the counter, filling the stools on either side of Stone. 34 men in leather, silent, watching. They did not form a line. They did not crowd around Tyler. They simply filled the space, their presence steady and calm, their eyes moving between Tyler and the door. Tyler's friends were gone. Corey had slipped out the side exit. Jake and Drew were already in the parking lot, their footsteps fading into the night. The door swung shut behind them. Tyler stood alone in the center of the room. His chest was still puffed out, but his hands had stopped moving. His eyes darted from face to face, counting, measuring, understanding. Denise held Maya tighter. Her free hand moved toward her pocket, fingers reaching for her phone. She was ready to call for help. Stone looked at her. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes told her to wait. Not yet. There was something he needed Tyler to understand first. Tyler's voice came out smaller now. He said this was none of their business. He said he had not done anything wrong. He said they could not just stand there and stare at him. No one answered. No one moved. The diner was silent. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The clock on the wall ticked forward, second by second. Tyler stood in the middle of it all, alone, surrounded by men who did not blink, did not speak, did not look away. And for the first time that night, he had nothing left to say. Tyler's eyes moved around the room. 35 men in leather sat in booths and stood at the counter, their faces calm, their bodies still. No one spoke. No one moved toward him. They just watched. He tried to laugh. The sound came out thin and wrong. He said this was ridiculous. He said he had not done anything. He said everyone needed to relax. No one answered. Tyler turned toward the door. Two guardians stood near the entrance, not blocking the way, just present. Their arms were crossed. Their eyes stayed on him. He stopped. His shoulders dropped. He spun back around and looked at Denise. He said she was overreacting. He said it was just a joke. He said she needed to learn how to take a compliment. His voice rose higher with each word. Denise did not respond. She held Maya tighter and kept her eyes on the floor. Stone stepped forward. His movement was slow and deliberate. He stopped 3 feet from Tyler, close enough to be heard, far enough to give no excuse for contact. His voice came out low and steady. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He spoke the way a man speaks when he has nothing left to prove. He said Tyler had been harassing this woman for weeks. He said Tyler had targeted her child. He said Tyler had filmed her against her will, blocked her from reaching her daughter, and sat down across from an 11-year-old girl to scare her into silence. Tyler opened his mouth to interrupt. Stone kept talking. He said every moment of it had been seen, not just by the men in this room, by the cameras in the ceiling, by the people outside, by a community that would not forget. Tyler's face changed. The arrogance drained out of him. His hands came up, palms out, fingers spread. He said he was leaving. He said this was stupid. He said no one had any proof. He turned and tried to push past Stone. Stone did not move. His feet stayed planted. His arms stayed at his sides. Tyler shoved him, both hands against his chest. Stone absorbed the impact without stepping back. His expression did not change. A voice came from the side. Calm. Clear. A man named Darnell Hayes stepped forward. The patch on his vest said Doc. He had been a police officer for 22 years before he retired. Doc held up his phone. The screen faced Tyler. He said Tyler had just assaulted someone on camera. He said the video had been recording for 5 minutes. He said everything Tyler had done was documented. Tyler stared at the screen. His mouth opened. No words came out. Denise pulled her phone from her apron pocket. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke to the dispatcher. She said there was a man harassing her and her daughter at Rosie's diner. She said he had just assaulted a customer in front of witnesses. She gave the address. She stayed on the line. Sirens rose in the distance. Faint at first, then louder. Tyler backed toward the door. His hands were still raised. His eyes darted from Stone to Doc to the men filling the room. He said this was a mistake. He said he had friends. He said they would regret this. No one responded. The bikers stayed where they were. The sirens grew closer. Maya was still pressed against her mother's side. Her face was pale. Her hands gripped the fabric of Denise's apron. But for the first time all night, her eyes lifted. She looked at Stone. Her lips moved without sound. 2 words, small and quiet, meant only for him. Thank you. Stone's chest tightened. He gave her the smallest nod. Nothing more. The front door swung open. 2 officers stepped inside, hands on their belts, eyes scanning the room. Doc moved to meet them. He spoke in a low voice, gesturing toward Tyler, explaining what had been recorded. The officers approached Tyler. One of them asked for his ID. The other told him to keep his hands visible. Tyler's voice cracked as he tried to explain. They did not listen. They walked him toward the door. As Tyler passed Stone, he turned his head. His voice dropped low, barely a whisper. Only Stone could hear. He said this was not over. He said Stone had made a mistake. He said he knew people who did not forget. Stone did not respond. His face stayed still, but his jaw tightened, just slightly, and his eyes followed Tyler all the way out the door. The sirens faded. The room stayed quiet, and Stone stood in the center of the diner, watching the flashing lights disappear into the night. The police cruiser sat in the parking lot with its lights still spinning. Tyler was in the back seat, his head down, his hands cuffed behind him. He did not look up when the officers walked past. He did not say a word. His friends stood near their cars, surrounded by 2 more officers. They talked fast, their hands moving, their voices overlapping. They were eager to explain. They were eager to blame. They pointed toward the cruiser and shook their heads like they had never been part of any of it. Inside the diner, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The booths were empty now. The coffee pot sat cold on its burner. The only sound was the low murmur of voices from the back room, where the guardians had gathered again. Denise sat in the corner booth with Maya pressed against her side. The homework was gone. The pencil was gone. All that remained was the 2 of them, holding each other in the quiet. Denise's face was wet. The tears came without sound, rolling down her cheeks and dropping onto Maya's hair. She did not wipe them away. She did not try to speak. She just held on. Maya was still. Her eyes were closed. Her small hand gripped her mother's shirt, fingers twisted in the fabric, holding tight. She had not let go since the police arrived. Stone stood near the counter, watching them. His hands were at his sides. His shoulders were tense. He did not know what to do with himself. This was not his moment. He did not want thanks. He did not want to be seen. He turned toward the kitchen doors, ready to rejoin the club and disappear the way he always did. Denise's voice stopped him. She stood slowly, Maya still tucked under her arm. She crossed the room and stopped a few feet away from Stone. Her eyes were red. Her voice was rough and quiet. She said she had been working at this diner for 2 years. She said people came and went every night. She said no one ever saw, not the way he did. Stone's jaw tightened. He did not know what to say. He looked at Maya, then back at Denise. He told her the club ran a program for families like hers. Legal support, safety planning, escorts to court hearings if she ever needed them. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser and wrote a phone number on it. He slid it across the counter toward her. Denise took it without looking at it. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her apron pocket. She nodded once, and her lips pressed together. Hammer walked over from the back room. He put a hand on Stone's shoulder and squeezed. The club was ready to leave. But Hammer did not head for the door. He stepped past Stone and stopped in front of Denise. He reached into his vest and pulled out a white envelope, thick with bills. He said it was tips from the retirement party. He said the boys had collected it in 3 minutes flat. He said it was for the week off she was about to take. Denise shook her head. She started to say she could not accept it. Hammer did not let her finish. He pressed the envelope into her hand and closed her fingers around it. He told her to take care of her daughter. Then he turned and walked toward the door. The other guardians followed. One by one, they filed out into the parking lot, their boots heavy on the tile floor. Maya pulled away from her mother. She walked to the door and pushed it open. The night air rushed in, cool and quiet. She stood on the threshold and watched. The bikers mounted their motorcycles. Engines rumbled to life, one after another, filling the parking lot with sound. Headlights swept across the pavement. The first bikes pulled out onto the road, their taillights glowing red in the dark. Stone was the last to leave. He sat on his motorcycle near the edge of the lot, his hands on the handlebars, his eyes on the diner. He saw Maya standing in the doorway. Her face was pale in the light from inside. Her arms hung at her sides. He raised his hand. Just once, a small wave. A quiet goodbye. Maya raised hers. They stayed like that for a moment. Two strangers who were no longer strangers, connected by a night that neither of them would forget. Then Stone kicked his bike into gear and pulled away. The engine roared. The red taillight faded into the distance. Maya stood in the doorway and watched until the sound was gone. Then she turned and walked back inside, where her mother was waiting with open arms. The phone calls started 2 days after Tyler was arrested. The first came from a woman who worked at a gas station on the highway. She said Tyler had come in 3 times a week, for months. She said he always stood too close. She said he once followed her to her car after her shift ended. The second call came from a librarian in the next town over. Tyler had asked for her number. When she said no, he showed up at the library every afternoon for 2 weeks. He never checked out a book. He just watched her work. By the end of the week, 5 more women had come forward. A school aide, a pharmacy clerk, a young mother who had stopped going to the grocery store on weekends because Tyler always seemed to be there. The pattern was clear. Tyler's behavior was not random. It was calculated. It was repeated. And it was getting worse. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Doc's phone video showed the assault in the diner. The security cameras showed everything else. Tyler's family hired a lawyer, but there was nothing to argue. The case was too public. The documentation was too complete. Tyler pleaded guilty to harassment, assault, and menacing. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in county jail and 5 years of probation. He was banned from any contact with Denise, Maya, or any of the witnesses. His phone was seized. His social media accounts were shut down. His name appeared in the local paper with a photograph that made him look smaller than he had seemed that night in the diner. The community reacted in waves. At first, there was discomfort. Some people said the bikers had overstepped. Some people said there should not have been a scene. Some people asked why no one had just called the police in the first place. But as the story spread, the tone began to shift. People remembered seeing Tyler at the diner before. They remembered the way he looked at the servers. They remembered hearing rumors and doing nothing about them. The discomfort turned inward. The Iron Guardians became local news. Not as outlaws, not as troublemakers, as the men who had stood up when no one else did. A reporter from the county paper drove out to the clubhouse and asked to speak with the president. Hammer met her in the parking lot. He did not invite her inside. She asked him why the club had gotten involved. Hammer said they had always believed in protecting the vulnerable. She asked if they were trying to change their image. Hammer said the image had never been accurate in the first place. She asked what the patches on their vests really meant. He told her they meant family. They meant service. They meant standing between a child and anyone who wanted to hurt her. The article ran on the front page. The photograph showed Hammer standing in front of a row of motorcycles, arms crossed, face calm. The headline read, "Guardians at the Gate." Stone did not do interviews. He watched from the back of the clubhouse while the reporter asked her questions. He stayed quiet when the phone rang with requests for comments. He did not want attention. He never had. But when the local elementary school invited the club to speak about safety, Stone agreed to go. He sat in a metal folding chair in front of 100 children. The gym was bright and loud. The kids fidgeted on the floor, their eyes wide, their questions endless. Stone talked about paying attention. He talked about trusting your feelings when something seemed wrong. He talked about asking for help, even when it felt scary. He talked about making noise when something bad was happening, because silence was what people like Tyler counted on. The children listened. Some of them nodded. Some of them raised their hands with questions he did not know how to answer. But he stayed until the bell rang, and he shook hands with every teacher who thanked him on the way out. That night, someone slipped an envelope under the clubhouse door. Stone found it the next morning. The paper was pink, folded unevenly. He opened it and found a drawing inside. A girl on a bicycle, a man on a motorcycle. The sun was a yellow circle in the corner. The grass was a thick green line at the bottom. At the top of the page, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you, Stone." He stood in the doorway for a long time, holding the paper in both hands. His thumb traced the edge of the drawing. His chest tightened in a way he had not felt in years. He did not frame it. He did not show it to anyone. He folded it carefully and tucked it into the pocket of his vest, right next to the pink ribbon that had belonged to his daughter. The morning shift started at 6. Denise arrived at the diner before the sun came up, tied her apron, and began brewing the first pot of coffee. The fluorescent lights still buzzed overhead, but they did not feel the same anymore. The booth in the corner was just a booth now. The pass-through window was just a window. 3 months had passed since that night. The diner owner had adjusted her schedule after the arrest made the local news. He said it was about staffing. He said it was about efficiency. But Denise knew he was embarrassed. He had let Tyler and his friends sit in that diner for months without saying a word. Now everyone knew it. He gave her the morning shift and added a small raise. It was not enough to change her life, but it was something. It was a start. Maya went to school during the day now, and Denise was home by the time the bus dropped her off. They ate dinner together at the small kitchen table. They watched television on the couch with a blanket between them. They did not talk about what happened, not directly, but they did not pretend it had not happened either. Maya was in therapy. The sessions were slow at first. She sat in the chair across from the counselor and stared at her shoes. She answered questions with one word. Yes. No. Fine. But she drew. The counselor gave her paper and markers, and Maya filled page after page. She drew the diner. She drew the booth. She drew the men who laughed at her mother. The images were dark at first, heavy lines and sharp angles. Then one day, she drew something different. She drew a wall. It stretched across the page, thick and solid. On one side was something dark, something without a shape. On the other side was a girl and her mother, standing close together. The counselor asked her what the wall was made of. Maya looked at the drawing for a long time. Then she said it was made of people who saw her. Denise joined a support group in the next town over. The meetings were held in the basement of a church on Tuesday nights. She sat in a folding chair and listened to other women tell their stories. Some of them had been followed. Some of them had been threatened. Some of them had stayed silent for years. Denise did not share right away. She was not ready, but she listened. She learned that she was not alone. She learned that silence was not the same as safety. Stone stayed in their lives, but gently. He did not impose. He did not show up unannounced. He sent birthday cards with no return address. He dropped off a bag of groceries once, leaving it on the doorstep without knocking. He showed up at Maya's school play in December, sitting in the back row with his leather vest tucked under his jacket. He clapped when she took her bow. He left before the lights came up. One evening in late winter, Denise called the number on the napkin. She invited Stone for dinner. He arrived at 6, helmet under his arm, boots wiped clean on the mat outside the door. The apartment was small and warm. The table was set for 3. It was awkward at first. Stone did not know how to sit at a kitchen table without his vest feeling like armor. He held his fork too tightly. He answered questions with short sentences. He looked at the walls and the photos and the small signs of a life being rebuilt. But Maya asked him questions. She asked about motorcycles. She asked about the club. She asked what the patches meant. She asked why he had looked through the window that night. Stone set down his fork. He looked at her, and then he told her the truth. He said he had lost someone once, a long time ago. He said he made a promise after that. He said he promised himself he would never look away again. Maya was quiet. She looked at her plate. She looked at her mother. Then she reached across the table and took Stone's hand. Her fingers were small and warm. Her grip was steady. She told him that his daughter would be proud of him. Stone did not speak. His jaw tightened. His eyes stayed on the girl's face. Something moved behind his expression, something deep and old and carefully guarded. He did not pull his hand away. He did not try to fill the silence with words. He just held on. The first training session took place in a middle school gymnasium on a Saturday morning. 40 parents sat in folding chairs, their eyes on the man in the leather vest standing at the front of the room. Stone held a microphone in one hand and a small printed card in the other. He told them about the 3-tug signal. He explained how a child could use it without speaking. He showed them what it looked like when a small hand reached up to an ear and pulled, once, twice, 3 times. He told them the signal only worked if someone was watching. Then he asked how many of them had ever been in a public place and felt like something was wrong. Every hand in the room went up. He told them that feeling was a gift. He told them to trust it. The Iron Guardians partnered with 6 schools that spring. They brought printed materials and volunteer trainers. They taught children how to ask for help without making a sound. They taught teachers what to look for. They taught cafeteria workers and bus drivers and crossing guards that the quiet ones were often the ones who needed attention the most. The 3-tug signal became part of the safety curriculum. It was printed on posters. It was practiced in classrooms. It was added to the handbook that every parent received at the start of the school year. Denise spoke at the first parent meeting. She stood behind a podium with her hands flat on the surface, the same way she used to stand behind the diner counter. Her voice was steady. Her eyes moved across the room. She told them what happened. She told them about Tyler. She told them about the months of silence, the fear, the nights she worked with her daughter sitting alone in a booth. She told them about the man who saw what no one else saw. She told them the signal only works if someone is watching. She told them to watch. The room was quiet when she finished. Then someone in the back began to clap. The sound spread until everyone was standing. The club hosted the first Guardians Day in June. The parking lot behind the clubhouse was transformed. Picnic tables lined the grass. A barbecue pit smoked near the fence. Children ran between parked motorcycles, pointing at the chrome, asking questions, climbing onto seats for photographs. Stone stood near a folding table covered with pamphlets. He shook hands with parents and answered questions about the club's programs. He signed up volunteers. He handed out cards with phone numbers for families who needed help. Local police officers walked through the crowd, not as enforcers but as partners. One of them played catch with a group of kids near the edge of the lot. Another stood beside Hammer, laughing at something he said. The workshop Stone led that afternoon was called What to Do When You See Something. He stood in front of a whiteboard and drew diagrams. He explained how to create public attention without confrontation. He explained how to use a phone to document without escalating. He explained that protection did not require violence. It required presence. The ripple effect began before summer ended. Other towns called, asking for training materials. Other clubs reached out to learn the model. Other families sent letters asking for help. What happened in Rosie's diner became more than a story. It became a movement. Hammer gave a rare public speech at the end of Guardians Day. He stood on a small stage near the barbecue pit, his voice carrying across the crowd. He said people looked at bikers and saw leather and noise. He said people saw tattoos and loud engines and made assumptions. He said they were not wrong to be cautious. But underneath all of it, he said, they were just people who decided that children mattered more than comfort. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then the applause came, rolling across the parking lot like the rumble of engines. 1 year after the diner incident, the second Guardians' Day parade rolled through town. Stone's motorcycle led the line, engine steady, exhaust rumbling low. Behind him, 2 riders sat on the back of his bike. Denise held onto his waist, her hair tucked under a borrowed helmet. Maya sat between them, her small hands gripping the seat, her face bright with something that had not been there a year ago. The parade moved slowly through the main street. People lined the sidewalks, waving, cheering, holding signs that said, "Thank you and we see you." Maya lifted her hand and waved back. She was not invisible anymore. She was not silent. She was a girl on a motorcycle, surrounded by people who had chosen to stand up. And the man in front of her, the one who had seen her when no one else did, kept his eyes on the road and his heart where it had always been. The park was quiet on Sunday afternoon. Families spread blankets across the grass. Children chased each other near the playground. A dog ran circles around its owner, barking at nothing. Maya sat on one of the swings, her legs pumping hard, her hair flying behind her. She laughed as she rose higher, the chains creaking with each push. The sound carried across the open space, bright and unguarded. Denise sat on a bench nearby, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee. She watched her daughter with the kind of attention that had become second nature. Every few seconds, her eyes moved across the park, checking the paths, the parking lot, the faces of strangers. She was not afraid anymore, but she was awake. She would always be awake. At the edge of the lot, a motorcycle sat parked in the shade of an old oak tree. Stone leaned against it, arms crossed, watching the same scene Denise watched. He was not intruding. He was not waiting for something to happen. He was just there, the way he had been all year. Watching was who he was now. The afternoon light stretched long across the grass. Maya slowed her swing and let her feet drag in the dirt. She looked toward the parking lot and spotted the motorcycle. A grin spread across her face. Most people saw bikers and made assumptions. They saw the leather and the noise and the tattoos. They saw rough men with rough lives, people to avoid, people to fear. They did not see the man who sat in a back room and noticed a child's silent signal. They did not see the 35 riders who filled a diner without raising a fist. Most people assumed that when something bad happened in public, someone else would handle it. They assumed that speaking up was not their job. They assumed that small moments did not matter. This story proved them wrong. A 10-year-old girl tugged her ear 3 times. A man with a broken heart and a leather vest paid attention. And because of that moment, that tiny, silent movement, a child was safe. A mother was free. A community learned that protection did not always look the way they expected. Denise set down her coffee and stood. She walked across the grass to the swings and held out her hand. Maya took it, and together they crossed the park toward the parking lot. Stone straightened as they approached. He nodded at Denise. She nodded back. Maya stopped in front of the motorcycle. Her eyes moved over the chrome, the handlebars, the wide leather seat. She looked up at Stone with a question in her face. She asked if she could honk the horn. Stone looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded. He said yes. Maya reached out and pressed the button. The horn echoed across the park, loud and sharp, startling a flock of birds from a nearby tree. She laughed, the sound mixing with the fading honk, filling the quiet afternoon with something bright. Denise smiled. Stone smiled. For a long moment, the 3 of them stood together at the edge of the parking lot. A mother who had learned to speak, a girl who had learned to be seen, a man who had learned that looking away was never an option. The sun dipped lower. The shadows stretched longer. Families packed up their blankets and headed home. Somewhere, in a small town just like this one, another child was sitting in a booth, waiting for someone to notice. Another mother was working a double shift, hoping nothing would go wrong. Another man was deciding whether to look up from his phone or keep scrolling. This story mattered because people stayed to hear it. It mattered because there are those who care about children, about mothers, about the quiet moments that can change everything. Every time a story like this is shared, it reminds someone else to pay attention. It reminds them to be the person who sees. The park emptied slowly. Maya climbed onto the back of the motorcycle, just for a moment, just to see what it felt like. Denise stood beside her, one hand on her daughter's shoulder. Stone looked out at the road ahead. The engine was silent. The day was ending. But the work was not finished. It never would be. And somewhere, in a diner or a park or a grocery store, another story was waiting to be told. Another signal was waiting to be seen. Another guardian was deciding to stand up. All it took was one person willing to watch.